From the beginning, man has been obsessed with the desire to see the future. Today, more than ever, people are turning to astrology to find out what the future holds for them and the world. In 1555, famous astrologer and seer Michel de Nostradamus published a book called The Prophecies, and it is his most read book today. This book is a collection of 942 quatrains, which are simply four-line poems. Many believe these are predictions for the future of the world. It is said that while Nostradamus was in a trance-like state, locked away in a secret room at Solon province, he was shown visions of the end times along with sounds and words. One of the most alarming visions that Nostradamus claims to have seen was the coming of the King of Terror. Nostradamus wrote that his name would be Mabus, and he will descend from the sky to the earth in the month of September 1999. However, since this date has come and gone without any incident indicating this event, followers of Nostradamus now proclaim the date was written in code and should have been read in reverse, which is 9991. Another well-known self-proclaimed psychic and astrologer is Jean Dixon. She predicted that this AntiChrist would be born on February 5th, 1962, and will revolutionize the world before the year 2000. This man will bring everyone together under one religion. She even claims she saw him plotting with his followers at the young age of 19 years old in the year 1983. Even though none of these predictions came to pass, her followers argue that because 1962 had a solar eclipse that year, the date predicted may be connected to other future eclipses that are to come. There were other well-known contemporary prophets that made predictions of the coming Antichrist, but they never came to pass. Compared to the prophetic speculations made by these contemporary seers, the Bible also makes prophetic claims that have basis in historical evidence and fact. Many of these biblical predictions are even more startling than those made by the well-known astrologers. Opposite to the prophets of the Bible, these famous astrologers would never stake their lives on their predictions. According to the Old Testament law, the true test of a prophet of God predictions must be 100% or risk being stoned to death. Astonishingly, many Bible prophecies that were written hundreds of years ago have already come to fulfillment, and some of these future events are happening in our time. The writer of the last book of the Bible emphasizes that he actually saw and heard everything he wrote in the book of Revelation. Even though he did not understand everything he was witnessing, he was careful to record the events exactly as they were shown him. Even the prophet Daniel of the Old Testament was greatly disturbed by the visions that were shown him of the end times. When he asked the angel of the Lord what the visions meant, He was told it was not for his understanding and to seal up the book until the last days, when wisdom is given for interpretation. The term Antichrist refers to anyone who opposes God. The Epistles of John in the New Testament is the only book of the Bible that uses this term. This terminology is used to describe a spiritual condition of those who deny Jesus Christ as God. Although John speaks of a particular Antichrist who is coming in the end days. In the book of Revelation, Apostle John says that this Antichrist is referred to as a beast. Apostle Paul refers to him in the New Testament as the man of lawlessness. This man of lawlessness will not only grow great towards the south, which is Egypt, and the east, which is Asia Minor, but also into the Holy Land, Israel. He will prosper greatly through his cunning and craftiness, and will reward those who acknowledge him with glory and honor, giving them authority over nations. Eventually, the Antichrist will cast down every truth to the ground and will worship his own image, exalting himself as God. At this time, the teachings of the Bible will be looked at as out-of-date theologies, which are inadequate to meet modern-day man's needs. The teachings of Christians will be seen as a mental and emotional disorder and will be considered by society as against rational debate and to be divisive. In Daniel chapter 2, it talks about a vision of a great human image representing all worldly governments that will take place on the earth. The head of the great image was made of gold and represents the Babylonian Empire, which began in 605 BC. The breast and arms of the image were made of silver and represented the Medo-Persia Empire, which replaced the Babylonian Empire in 330 BC. The belly and thighs of bronze represents the Macedonia and Greek Empire. That's to reign from 336 BC until 323 BC. Finally, the legs of iron represents the great Roman Empire, which reigns between 30 BC and 476 AD. The two legs of the image symbolizes the western and eastern part of the Roman Empire. The 2 feet and the 10 toes, which is a mixture of iron and clay, symbolizes the last human government to reign on the earth. This is considered to be the revived Roman Empire, which is to be ruled by its last Caesar. The 10 toes represents 10 kings and 10 kingdoms that will be under this ruler. It was Rome that introduced universal Caesar worship. Caesar worship started when the first temple was erected to the godhead of the emperor in Pergamum in 29 BC. Rome's empire worship gradually grew out of the people's gratitude for what this government has done for them. Rome brought their standard of justice to every country they conquered, kicking out certain tyrants and establishing peace. This kind of order was unlike anything the world had seen, and the people were grateful. Soon this gratitude became personalized, and the populace began to regard the emperor as divine. This religion was then used to unify the people and influence the masses. In chapter 7 of Daniel, it gives a detailed description of what this ruler will be like. It talks about 4 beasts that corresponds to the 4 sections of the great image in Daniel chapter 2. The first beast mentioned is that of a lion, typifying King Nebuchadnezzar, and corresponds to the head of gold. The second beast is that of a bear, which symbolizes the leader of Medo-Persia, King Cyrus. This corresponds to the breast and arms made of silver. The third creature symbolizes a leopard, which represents Alexander the Great and corresponds to the belly and thighs of bronze. Finally, the fourth beast mentioned in chapter 7 of Daniel corresponds to the 2 legs and feet made of iron. In addition, this fourth beast has 10 horns representing 10 kings, which correspond to the 10 toes of the great image. Daniel chapter 7 also says that among these 10 kings, one will sprout up among them. This will be the Antichrist. Daniel describes this one as speaking great blasphemies, which will be hidden in deceitful words of double and ambiguous meanings. The Antichrist will be very dreadful and terrible in his conquering of neighboring powers on the earth. His physical appearance will match up to the world's idea of masculine beauty. The hypnotic quality of his eyes, along with the fatal, irresistible glare, will sweep men and women off their feet. He will present himself as a strong man that's needed among underlings. Like other dictators before him, he believes he is above mortal standards of ordinary man. However, unlike other earthly rulers before him, his philosophy will be entirely his own. At the beginning of his reign, the Antichrist will be tied to a religious organization stationed in Rome. The Bible refers to this religious system as a harlot, because professing to be in allegiance to Jesus Christ alone, it will actually be involved in worship of other gods, making her an adulteress in the eyes of the Lord. This ruler will arrive on the scene when people are anxious for peace and security at any price. It is through a unique plan that this new leader of Rome will make good on his promise of bringing peace to the Middle East region and bringing peace and security to Israel. With the world now experiencing great hope of peace, they will begin to put complete trust into this ruler and his kingdom. People will begin to look at this Roman leader as the answer to all the world's problems. War will begin to seem as an ancient practice of the forefathers. By promising them peace, many will willingly give their allegiance over to him. However, once the Antichrist has complete allegiance of the people, promises of peace and security will evaporate. At the height of his popularity, Antichrist will receive a head wound from an apparent assassination attempt, causing everyone to believe he has been killed. In chapter 17 in the book of Revelation, the Antichrist is also referred to as the 7th and 8th Caesar of the Roman Empire. According to history, the Roman Empire had 12 Caesars. Out of these 12, only 6 died of unnatural causes. They were Julius Caesar, Tiberius, Caligula, Nero, and Domitian, who was living when the book of Revelation was written. When the Antichrist originally shows up on the scene, he is referred to as the 7th Caesar. After he is slain, his dead body will be animated with another spirit, making him the 8th Caesar in the book of Revelation. This extraordinary event will cause the world to marvel after him. Soon after this miraculous recovery, he will turn on the religious organization referred to as the harlot and utterly destroy her with fire, so as to direct all worship attention to him. Daniel chapter 9 speaks about this man of darkness making a covenant for all to see with the nation of Israel for 7 years, which is indicated by the 7 days in chapter 9. This covenant will have something to do with allowing the Jews to rebuild their holy temple so they can continue their Old Testament practices of sacrifices to their God. Although, in the middle of these 7 years, the Antichrist has a change of heart and stops all Jewish worship, exalting himself as God and causing an abomination of having an image of himself placed in the Jewish temple. According to the book of Revelation, chapter 13, this image will be given a spirit, so it can speak and destroy anyone who does not bow down to it. Around this time, Europe will be a cashless society. Antichrist will compel everyone to receive a specific mark on their hand or forehead. This may be done with a laser beam which cannot be felt or seen with the human eye, but will be as permanent as a fingerprint. Anyone who refuses to receive this mark will be cut off from economical survival, preventing them from buying or selling. There won't be a shortage of food fundamentally, it just would be selectively distributed. People starving to death will do anything to receive food, and therefore they would be easier to control. An example of this would be what happened in Ethiopia. The people in that country who were starving had to go to the communistic government of Ethiopia to get food. They had to sign a pledge of allegiance to the government. Those who refused were killed on the spot.
Tell us when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of it at the end of the world? And Jesus answered and said, Take heed.
This act will expose the true followers of God on the earth at the time who will refuse to receive his number. Because of this, the Antichrist will direct his fury in their direction. History has proven over and over that a troubled society initiates an atmosphere for the rise of a dictator. An individual who seizes authority over a nation as a result of an emergency. As a result, the individual eventually achieves authority and power over the people. An example of this would be Adolf Hitler, who would not have achieved his control over the German people if it weren't a desperate time with desperate people. Unfortunately, these dictators have never been able to find a solution to the problems for which they were elected to solve. Today, crisis in the Middle East will continue to escalate until it threatens an all-out war, destabilizing the region's peace and security. A time will come when the nations of Europe will be forced to be brought under one government, one ruler. European economic community today is the forerunner of the revived Roman Empire that Prophet Daniel predicted would be limited to 10 nations. This confederacy would eventually become a great superpower with the Antichrist as its leader. Crisis in the Middle East will continue to escalate until it threatens an all-out war destabilizing the region's peace and security. All nations will be focused on solving this boiling pot of destruction.